there were concessions made. At least that's what the Israeli party was claiming, that they continued to make concessions and meet Hamas's demands. They were seeking proof of life for these 40 hostages and were unable to get them. This is reminiscent, too, of the very first hostage deal in November. There were issues within the second day of the exchange of apparently finding the hostage that was agreed to bring them to one of the aid convoys for that third party to bring them to Rafah, and then the exchange to take place.
The latest news in the Middle East is grim as ever. Last night, Hamas rejected the latest calls for a ceasefire. An official had earlier said that no progress had been made in negotiations over the weekend in Cairo, and that Hamas has no ability to release 40 hostages as part of the humanitarian deal. Well, let's get the latest from Zach Anders, who is a journalist based in Israel. In these proximate peace talks, what appears to have gone wrong?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, some of these issues that we are hearing about this morning are issues that the negotiation teams had reported for weeks that they were trying to meet some sort of resolution for. The proof of life of the women and children hostages, to get to that number of 40 in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. The Israelis apparently were willing to withdraw or told the U.S., per some reports out of Israeli media, that they would be willing to, during a ceasefire, stand down in this corridor that they've established that splits the Gaza half in two, allow civilians to return to the north half of the Gaza Strip. So this is reminiscent, too, of the very first hostage deal in November. There were issues within the second day of the exchange of apparently finding the hostage that was agreed to bring them to one of the aid convoys for that third party to bring them to Rafah, and then the exchange to take place. So this isn't entirely outside of things that haven't already been discussed. I would stress that this isn't like some 11th hour mishap where they didn't know about some of these issues, and that's what kept this from getting to the finish line. But what is surprising is that with how heavily involved the Qataris have been, that yesterday the Qatari spokesperson, Mahid al-Ansari, said that he's more optimistic today, yes, that would be yesterday, than he was a couple of days ago. They supposedly had a greater pulse on what was taking place with the Hamas delegation. So it did seem like this was really close, and then to have it fall apart all overnight. And I think, too, the timing of Prime Minister Netanyahu's mentioned that the Israelis had set a date for the invasion of Rafah, the campaign in Rafah. That news broke before the news that Hamas had rejected the ceasefire deal, so I think perhaps that timing is significant.
And it does appear that there are significant developments in practical developments on the ground in Gaza, both in terms of the Israeli military operation that you referred to, but also the civilian population moving back to Khan Yunis.
Yeah, and we continue to see the aerial activity. The air campaign is just as significant as it was before. Last night, the IDF says that an airstrike killed the head of Hamas's emergency bureau in a central camp in Gaza. I'm still working to learn more about this, but as far as I understand it, this is one of the refugee areas. So I'm not seeing in particulars or images from this strike. These are IDF claims. One of the things that I've been hounding my sources and the official channels with the IDF to try and get some sort of statement or answer for is, have you provided the civilian population with any instructions? You've left Khan Yunis. The forces, the ground forces, are presumably now entirely out of this city that once held over 1 million people. What is the instructions for the 1 million plus that are in Rafah? Have they been told not to go to Khan Yunis? Presumably we're seeing images that they have been returning. But the effort and emphasis at the beginning of this campaign that the Israelis were saying, well, we're taking great pains and going to great lengths to share with the civilian population instructions for them on how to stay safe and what they need to do. They were dropping those pamphlets from the air which gave instructions to go to Rafah. Well, are they giving any instructions now for them to stay out of Khan Yunis, to leave Rafah for Khan Yunis, because that's where the military attention is going to shift to next? And everything I've got so far is no comment. The IDF has not said that they're going to provide any special instructions for the civilians. So I think that's probably the main thing here today is, what are they being told? What are these people supposed to do now? They're basically looking at the news and seeing that where they're at is about to become the next Khan Yunis, the next Gaza City. So where are they supposed to go?
Okay, Zach Anders, important questions there. Thank you very much indeed.